You're listening to the Minutes on Growth podcast, the show that brings you mindfully curated insights into relationships, spirituality, personal development, and everything in between, with your host, Tannaz Hosseinpour. Hi, everyone. It's Tannaz Hosseinpour, and welcome back to another episode of Minutes on Growth. I am so excited to welcome back Danielle Naor, Kabbalah teacher, Tikkun healer, and belief system coach. Welcome.
Thank you. Excited to be here again.
You are one of my favorites. I was going to say I'm one of your biggest fans. You really are one of my favorites. I love the way you talk about belief systems. The last time you were here on the podcast, we talked about the difference between spirituality and religion, how there's no coercion in spirituality. We talked about the importance of respecting the concept of free will, why we're here on earth, how we're meant to transform from person A to person B, the spiritual reason behind challenges, the difference between reactive and proactive learning, the power of pain, and the powerful spiritual tool of pause. What a pleasure. I mean, we covered
We covered all of that?
Yeah.
I can't remember.
All of that in 20 minutes. I don't know how you did it. That's like your superpower. But today I really wanted us to dive a little bit deeper into the spiritual concept of, the message behind the pain, the reason why certain challenges come up. And I wanted to ask you, why is it that we all have different movies? Why are we born into different families? Why do we have different challenges?
All right, so let's get right into it. I like to take it even a little bit deeper, just at a thought. And what we learn in the ancient wisdom of Kabbalah is that we all come from the same root, from the same source. And before even this world was created, before our souls came to this world, we existed as one collective soul, really one collective soul. Without going into all the details of what happened and why, this one collective soul shattered into many, many small pieces. And that's what we see now as many different 7 billion human people is basically come from one of this collective soul. And it says something beautiful. It says in the Kabbalistic teaching that certain souls came from the head of Adam, and then other souls came from the legs of Adam. And of course, it's figuratively speaking. It's not like there was one person we come, but we're talking about energies. So one aspect, the deeper, I know we didn't plan perhaps to even go that route, that spiritual and that deep so fast, but feel compelled to share it in this way, just to elevate our perspective in diversity. Why is everything so diverse? Although we all come from the same root, so we have something in common, we're all human beings, we're all one in a sense, but it would be shameful to say that we're all the same, because that's denying our uniqueness and our individuality. So that is one approach. Now back to your question of why we're all born in different, because we all have different unique light to express, unique gifts to express, right? Some people are more intellectual and they have great wisdom, and so it needs to be expressed a certain way. And therefore, those people need to have different experiences, certain experience, born into certain families. Some people are very candid with expressing their creative abilities, right? With art or dance or performance. And so that light needs to be revealed somehow. So people need to have certain experiences and environment for that to tap into, to express that, right? So that's one of the ways to go about it. The other thing is that we have something that we touched upon last time as well. We have something that's called tikkun. Tikkun, a quick refresher, is all of the things that our soul came here to learn. Tikkun is the life lessons that our soul came to learn. Some of these lessons involve transformation of challenges, overcoming adversity. And some of these lessons has to do with discovering my unique light and learn how to express it proactively and beautifully and how to be in service with that, right? So in order for that, like going back to that example, in order for that light to be expressed or for those lessons to be learned, the universe created the perfect setup in a perfect scenario. Actually, it's not so much about working on, because on my one-on-one session and Tikkun healing session, when we go into previous childhood experience or early childhood experiences, even trauma, my end vision, my end goal is always not just to help the person to accept what they went through. This is one step and one level, to really accept, acknowledge and accept what we had to go through, even the most difficult challenges and situation. But then there's another step beyond acceptance, after acceptance. It starts with acceptance, but the next step after that is to get to the realization where I really and honestly can tell myself, you know what? It couldn't have been any other way. That was the only and the best way these experiences, and we're talking about including difficult experiences. So sometimes it's a hard pill for people to swallow at first. That's why we need to start with acceptance and then work our way through naturally. We're not forcing that understanding. It's an inner realization that comes from understanding and acceptance and understanding the process and journey of my soul. But it's beautiful when it happens, when we get to realize that I couldn't have had any other or better parents than the ones that I had, because they helped me to work through exactly what my soul came here to learn, learning exactly, and that's made me who I am today. I couldn't have had any better parents, environment, life circumstances. That's exactly what was needed. And with Kabbalah, we learned that there was an agreement to that. Before our soul came to this world, our soul signed a contract, a spiritual contract, that included all the people that are involved in our life, family, friends, all the environments, the possibilities for certain experiences, although there is free will and certain things we not destined per se to experience, we can always shift that. But there's always the possibility, and the soul agrees to that possibility. And not for the sake of suffering, for the sake of free will, as we explored last time, and growth and learning these lessons, because this is something of a lasting fulfillment that stays with us forever.
Wow. Wow. So much. So much to dive into. But as you were speaking, the first question that came to my mind is, how do I know what my tikkuns are? Like, in order to heal something, you have to know it exists. So how can we know it's what is present that we need to work through?
Yeah. So this is a question we get often, right? How do I know what's my tikkun? And let's explore that for a little bit, because really it's not that complicated. Tikkun is usually something that is repetitive. The reason why it's still a lesson to be learned is because I haven't learned it yet, right? And in Kabbalah, we even talk about previous lifetimes and reincarnation. So we're assuming that we've been carrying this lesson for a long, long time, and it's still around because we haven't learned it, right? That lesson might be learning how to set healthy boundaries and learning to appreciate ourselves. That lesson has to do with self-worth and self-empowerment. The tikkun can be around fears, fear of failure, fear of success. Tikkun can be around learning how to let go of control. Well, control freak can be a big tikkun. So you might say, Daniel, I have all of them, right? So how do I know? And the truth of the matter is, if it's a real tikkun, it's impossible for you to have real 10 different tikkuns. Usually tikkun is one or two things in the same theme, in the same topic, and then there are many layers to it. So while it might be true that you have a little bit of jealousy because we're human beings, so at times we get jealous, at times we have a little bit of a temper, but that doesn't make it your tikkun. That makes it just a few things that you need to watch out for, and part of having a human experience is having all these things. But tikkun is something specific. So remember, tikkun has two parts. One is the challenging things that we came to transform, and then the positive things that we came to share. So let's start with the challenging parts. Number one, it's something repetitive. So it's something that keeps on happening. It reflects in my relationships, in my career, at home, with family, and something that I'm aware of intellectually, but I keep on making the same mistake. Most likely it's related to my tikkun. Another rule of thumb that we can identify a tikkun, beside negative repetitive patterns, is tikkun will be something that is uncomfortable for me. So it will be something that I will try to avoid. It's something that I rather do 20 billion things to avoid and escape addressing that one thing. So maybe I'm very good with people. Maybe I am very charitable. Maybe I'm great with organizing and planning and doing events and helping so many of my friends, and everybody loves me. But maybe I'm really avoiding something at home, right? With my kids or with my wife or with my husband or my significant other. And really my tikkun can be intimacy. So the person would love to put things on a large scale, large, big, saving the world, doing good for others. But when it comes to one-on-one relationship and being vulnerable, being intimate, being open, on a one-on-one, they will avoid it like coronavirus, right? They're like, no way, I won't put myself in that position because
thank you for calling out all the Aquarians in the world. I feel like I just got called out.
Exactly. I actually had that in mind when I talked about it. Yes. And by the way, that's another great way to find out about tikkun is look into even specifically Kabbalistic astrology, but even conventional gives us some clues and hints, right? And in what our tikkuns are. And this is part of what the soul chose. The soul chose to be born in February, late January or February as an Aquarius because they're more likely to have the tikkun with, one-on-one and connecting with people and being vulnerable. A person would choose to be born in the month of Scorpio because they came to learn how to love themselves and not to kill themselves, right? And hating themselves or letting go of control, which is also Scorpio tikkun, right? So we can even use Kabbalistic astrology or astrology as a tool to kind of get an idea what our tikkun is. So we said repetitive is something that is uncomfortable, we're trying to avoid. Astrology can help us with that. But what I like to do in the one-on-one tikkun healing sessions or in the workshops that we do is to be more specific, because that can give us a general sense and it's a good place to start with. And then we go from, okay, tikkun, repetitive patterns, things that have been repeating themselves, lessons that I came to learn. Let's break it down. Let's look at what events, what happened in my life and what did it trigger and what beliefs did I start to absorb and agree to as a way of operating from that place. And that's where tikkuns collides with belief systems.
I love that. That's the challenging part. How do we figure out what our healthy tikkuns are, like the light that we came to share, our gifts?
Yeah. You see, one might think that the more difficult part is to transform the darkness. Mm-hmm. But interestingly, from my experience working one-on-one with people, they have a harder time. They don't have so much a problem. They're very open about it. They love to talk about that, about their dark side. But then I ask them, you know what? I want to do a quick exercise with you. Pen and paper, 2 minutes, 3 minutes, write down, find me 15 things that you're great at, 15 things of your gifts, strengths, and talents. And I'll tell you, 9 out of 10, it's such a hard exercise for them. And rarely they find more than 10 in that amount of time. And why is it so hard for us? Why is that so hard for us? I think it was Nelson Mandela, I forgot who that quote is, that said, we're not so much afraid of our darkness than we're afraid of our light. Because you see, like, we got familiar with our darkness and we got used to our darkness. It's like my teacher, the Rav Burke, used to say that people hug their chaos and they hug it like a trash can and say, don't take it away from me. Don't take it away from me. At least I'm familiar with that, right? It's the known, and we're creatures that are wired to seek out the safety in what's known. So if all I know is pain or the darkness or procrastination or laziness or sadness or beating myself up, I'll hold on to that. I'll talk about it. I'll use my words about that. I'll tell people my story, right? With the clothing of, I want to change it. But the truth is, oftentimes people tell that or even go to therapy or doing other things because it actually does the opposite. It reinforces. Not that I'm against, I'm all about therapy, anything that helps a person. The consciousness of why we're doing it, right? oftentimes it reinforces and attaches us to the darkness. And so we're afraid of our light because if we were to truly own it, it would mean that we will have to take responsibility for that. It would mean that we'll have to do something with that. And that idea of responsibility, of stepping up, it will require to overcome fears. It will require to take risk. That is a scary idea for a lot of people. So practically, I would say two things that a person can, let's start with the first one. One thing that a person can do is as simple as that, just what I said. Take a few minutes and just write down, just become aware, just acknowledge the existence of your gifts, of your strength, of your unique and beautiful light. I know it's cliche, but it's really true. Like, it's like a snowflake. Everyone's soul is unlike the other. You have unique light to contribute, and the light chose you. The universe chose you for certain revelation. And it's not always going to be the glamorous, all seen, all known, starting the non-profit. A lot of people are waiting for that. What is my purpose? What is my life? I'm starting a non-profit, helping the poor. It's not always that. Sometimes, I had a conversation today with a lady, and I made her do exactly that exercise. And one of the things that she realized that she loves interior design, but immediately her left brain hemisphere, left side of the brain came in and started to criticize, started to judge, started to analyze it, started to say, but you cannot make any money with it. You're already later in your years. You're not going to start studying it, and starts to criticize and give her all the reasons why not to explore that. And I stopped her and say, stop saying, you realize what's happening? You're realizing who's talking now? There's two aspects. There's your soul that for whatever reason, it's part of your soul quality. The soul quality is attracted to that beauty, to this aspect. So it's not even just a hobby or a thing that you like to do. It's a way for your soul to express itself. So if we free our soul and what it attracts to, what it loves, where it feels it thrives, whether it's through art or interior design or communication or collaboration or planning of whatever it is, there's a surface level to that, the physical, that is easy to judge, or it doesn't fit into society, or it's been perceived a certain way in society. And then there's a soul level to look at it and say, you know what? It's part of the light of my soul that came to express it. If I can share with you something personally, for me, a personal example, I went through a period of time where I felt like I needed to go inward and quiet. And in this period of time, let's say it was 6 months or so, I gave myself permission, I gave myself time to do the things that I felt I wanted to do that were important for my soul. And part of it was writing, and part of it was poetry. Part of it was spoken word, and part of it was saying it out loud. Part of it was just writing it, and part of it was just writing it and not sharing it with anyone. But just allowing myself to tap into that, I feel it showed results beyond the seam. It showed results inside, internally for my soul. I felt through that, allowing myself to express that creative aspects in me. Maybe it didn't show results, in my work or in my progress or in my whatever, but I felt like it unblocked something. It unblocked something, maybe a flow of creativity that expressed itself later on in various ways. So I think one is become aware. Write down what you're good at, as simple as that. What your soul calls you for, your gifts, your strengths, your talents. And then ask yourself, what part of my gift, strength, of talents can I make more use of? I talked to another guy a few months ago, and for him it was cooking. And I encouraged him, and he got so much into the flow and the zone, and it gave him so much energy from cooking. And it's a beautiful thing because it's almost secondary of what we do. It's the energy that we put into it, right? I know a guy owns a coffee shop, and the energy, the joy, the love that he puts into it. I mean, I have no doubt that this is a big part of what his soul came in as well. It's part of his tikkun. So for someone, it's going to be roasting coffee. For someone else, it's going to be writing poetry. For someone else, it's going to be cooking. we want to allow ourselves to express it, see it, and then be courageous enough to do something with it, even if it doesn't make sense in the eyes of other people.
I love that. But I have a question. If we become aware of it and we find the courage to tap into it, to practice it, how can we stop the ego from identifying as it? So, in other words, how can I be everything and nothing at the same time?
Going very deep and poetic here. I love it. Yes, you see the two things that come to mind when you said that. And it's interesting. I think it's a fantastic question. The idea of clothing ourselves in certain identities, right? So I think if a person were to follow the approach in the way that I describe it, which is more soulful, they would understand that it's just part of the clothing. It's part of the clothing. Or it's one mask that my soul has. But there's so many facets. And usually the reason why people limit themselves in a certain identity or certain clothing, who are you? I'm a doctor. Who are you? I'm a mother. I'm a father. I'm a dentist, right? Is because they haven't explored enough of their soul qualities. So they think, I got to be something. Otherwise, it would mean I'm a nobody, right? So let me put all my ego into this clothing, and that defines me until a person, let's say, messes up. And that can be part of the tikkun. Part of the tikkun can be letting person know you're not defined by your profession. You're not defined by what people think about you. Part of the tikkun can be really knowing yourself and not care what other people think of you. And that can be also a big part of the tikkun. But yeah, I think that way of exploration of our soul qualities helps us to see who we really are, and that we don't need to be defined by one thing.
So do you think people, for example, like you read it in the news, someone big shot suddenly goes through a scandal and like there's so much quote unquote shame around it. So could that possibly be their tikkun of, losing that attachment to that identity, to that ego? Is that a version of a tikkun?
Absolutely. I mean, this is a wake-up call, right? Mm-hmm. And I think we experience this wake-up call globally, collectively right now, stronger. I don't want to say than ever, but definitely very strong. And on a personal level, we experience it because there's no going backwards, right? The cosmos is moving us forward because we also have a collective tikkun as humanity.
Okay.
Our collective tikkun as humanity is to reunify with our source, which means that we came here to transform our selfishness. And selfishness has various faces and masks. Fear is selfish. Doubts is selfish. Of course, pride and ego is selfishness. But even guilt and criticizing ourselves is selfish, right? Because who am I benefiting when I'm criticizing myself harshly? No one benefits from it. I'm thinking only about myself. Oh, I'm so bad. I'm so bad at this. I'm so bad. I'm not worth anything. I'm a zero. But that's sometimes the most selfish thing in the world, because I'm not finding my light and I'm depriving the world of my light, right? So we have a collective tikkun of transforming our consciousness from being focused on me, myself, and I into honoring our light, honoring who we are, our soul, and to see how can I be of service with that, right? That's the collective tikkun, because all the chaos that we see in the world right now, we can look in and try to find solutions in the physical, but there are no solutions there because the problem is not physical. Wars, disease, mental illness, poverty, all of that is a reflection of one consciousness. And it's a collective consciousness that every one of us contributes to it every single day. It's a consciousness of what we call in Kabbalah, desire to receive for oneself alone. Selfishness, because we're all unified. So I have my personal tikkun, but when I embark on the journey and process of transforming myself, tapping into my light, being more of service with that light, I'm also contributing to the speeding up the process of the collective tikkun, which is shifting the energy and raising the consciousness and the vibration of all humanity to vibrate on the level and the frequency of sharing, of kindness, of compassion. That's the collective tikkun.
Wow. So by working on our tikkun, we're not only healing ourselves, but the world we live in currently and the future, since we're shifting the narrative. So it's like a huge win-win-win situation. And you've been dropping gems the past 25 minutes, which I love, which brings me to my next question. How can we learn more? Like, how can everyone figure out what their tikkun is so we can get this ball moving?
Well, study Kabbalah. This journey, this path is definitely designed to help us raise awareness, right? And it is a journey. It is a journey. It is a process. And we can quicken that process, right? So I feel like ever since I started studying Kabbalah, it's like what the change is so fast. And I feel like it's not even like almost like every year or every 2 years, it feels like a whole lifetime. So that's actually the only thing that this wisdom does. It's speeding up the process for us. So lessons that used to take us, 5 years, 10 years to learn, that it doesn't pay off to be selfish in that area or in that way and this way. Suddenly I become also more sensitive to that. It starts to not to feel right? So let's say the example of gossip, right? Everybody knows that it's not the best thing in the world to do, but morals and ethics never changed anything or anybody. Just because knowing that it's not the good or right thing to do doesn't mean I won't do it. People most likely will continue to do it because they get a kick out of it. It gives them some sort of energy, right? But what if I start to raise my vibration and raise my consciousness where I'm surrounded by people that start to gossip, and what used to give me energy now doesn't resonate anymore with my frequency. And now suddenly, instead of getting a kick out of it, I start to feel, it doesn't feel right. I don't like it. Something is off. And I start to change my environment. And once I start to change my environment, a lot of things are set into motion. A lot of things starts to change because I am a product of 90% of what I see and what I hear and who I talk to and what I read, right? So even that little change and being more aware, right? Being more conscious has huge positive consequences.
Beautiful domino effect. And from a person who's been studying Kabbalah myself almost a decade now, really learning your tikkun can make such a big difference in your experience of reality, and as a result, in the experience of reality of those around you. So it's like a gift, and it's a season of gifting. So let us gift ourselves and other people that, and really, really change the narrative of the collective consciousness.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Daniel, for sharing, for coming on again. And you're just a ball of wisdom. Like, we just put you on a roll and you just keep going. And we cover like 10 weeks of class in 20 minutes.
Need to hold me back. I'm so honored to be here. Thank you for inviting me again. It's always a pleasure. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Daniel, for being on. And thank you, everyone, for listening. Speak soon. Thank you for joining us this week on Minutes on Growth. If you enjoyed today's episode, then make sure you never miss a show by clicking the subscribe button now.